Jake Matthews lived alone on Verdant 7, and that's exactly how he liked it. The research outpost sat in the middle of nowhere, just rolling green hills, strange purple trees, and the occasional weird bird thing that screamed at dawn. Most people would have gone crazy from the isolation. Jake? He was thriving. No meetings, no small talk, just him and his plants. He'd been there for 8 months, cataloging flora and taking soil samples. Boring work, maybe, but peaceful. The kind of peace you can't find on crowded colony worlds where everyone's in your business. That particular morning started normal enough. Jake was drinking his terrible instant coffee. The supply ship was late again, when he heard a thump outside. Not a big sound, but wrong somehow. Different from the usual forest noises he'd gotten used to. He grabbed his scanner and headed out, expecting to find a fallen branch or maybe one of those rabbit-sized creatures that kept eating his sensor cables. Instead, he found something that made him stop dead in his tracks. A dragon. An actual, honest-to-God dragon. Well, not exactly like the old Earth stories. This one was small, maybe the size of a golden retriever, with copper-colored scales that caught the morning light. But it had wings, 4 legs, a long tail, and a distinctly reptilian face. Close enough to a dragon in Jake's book. And it was hurt. The creature was lying on its side near his supply shed, breathing hard. One wing was spread out awkwardly, and Jake could see a nasty tear in the thin membrane. Blood, dark purple, not red, pooled underneath. The dragon's eyes, bright gold and way too intelligent, tracked Jake's every movement. Easy there, Jake said softly, the way you talk to a spooked horse. I'm not gonna hurt you. The creature made a low sound, somewhere between a growl and a whimper. It tried to stand but collapsed back down. Jake knew he shouldn't interfere. The non-interference protocols were clear. Observe native life, don't interact, definitely don't play veterinarian to unknown species. But looking at those eyes, seeing the pain and fear there, Jake couldn't just walk away. He'd become a biologist because he cared about living things, not to watch them suffer. He moved slowly, talking the whole time in that same calm voice. Gonna help you out, okay? Just stay still. Don't bite me. Please don't bite me. The dragon watched him approach but didn't attack. Up close, Jake could see it was young. The scales were still soft in places, not fully hardened. A juvenile, then. Probably got into a fight or tangled with something sharp. Jake had a field medical kit designed for humans, but the basics were universal enough. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic solution, and the dragon hissed, smoke puffing from its nostrils. Actual smoke. Jake nearly dropped his supplies. Okay, that's new, he muttered. You can breathe smoke. Good to know. Please don't set me on fire. The dragon settled down, though, like it understood he was helping. That was the first weird thing Jake noticed, how calm it became once it figured out his intentions. Animals didn't usually do that. They fought or fled, driven by instinct. This creature seemed to be thinking, making decisions. Jake used surgical glue to seal the tear in the wing membrane. Not a perfect fix, but it would hold until the thing healed naturally. He wrapped the wing gently, securing it against the dragon's body so it wouldn't flap and reopen the wound. The whole process took maybe 20 minutes. The dragon lay there the entire time, those golden eyes never leaving Jake's face. When he finished, Jake sat back on his heels. There you go, buddy. Should be good as new in a week or two. Just take it easy, yeah? The dragon stood up slowly, testing its weight. It looked at Jake for a long moment, made that chirping sound again, then limped off into the forest. Not flying, smart enough to know it couldn't with that wing. Just walking, disappearing into the purple undergrowth. Jake cleaned up the medical supplies and went back inside. He filed a report, noting the encounter, describing the creature's appearance and behavior. He called it a dragonling in the report because that dragon-looking thing seemed unprofessional. Then he went back to his coffee and his plant samples, figuring that would be the end of it. Just another weird day on a frontier world. 3 days later, Jake opened his door and nearly tripped over a dead animal on his doorstep. It was one of those rabbit things, freshly killed, laid out neatly on the metal grating. And sitting about 10 feet away, looking proud of itself, was the dragonling. The copper-scaled creature chirped at him, the same sound it had made before. Its wing was still wrapped, Jake's bandage still in place, but it had clearly been managing just fine. Jake stared at the dead rabbit. Then at the dragon. Then back at the rabbit. Did you bring me breakfast? The dragonling chirped again, louder this time, like it was saying obviously. Jake started laughing. He couldn't help it. Here he was, millions of miles from Earth, being brought hunting trophies by an alien dragon like he was some kind of medieval lord. The absurdity of it all hit him hard. "Thanks," he said finally, still grinning. "That's really thoughtful." "Weird, but thoughtful." The Dragonling watched him for another minute, seemed satisfied with whatever it saw, then spread its wings, carefully, testing the injured one, and flew off into the morning sky. Jake picked up the rabbit thing with gloved hands, studying it. Fresh kill, clean bite to the neck. The Dragonling had hunted this and brought it specifically to him. As payment, maybe? Gratitude for the medical help? Jake disposed of the rabbit properly and went back to work, but his mind kept wandering back to those intelligent golden eyes. To the way the creature had understood he was helping. To this deliberate gift-giving behavior. He had a feeling this wasn't the last he'd see of his copper-scaled visitor. He was right. The Dragonling came back 4 days later. Then a week after that. Then 3 days after that. Jake stopped being surprised when he found gifts on his doorstep. More rabbit things, colorful feathers the size of his hand, smooth stones that gleamed like polished metal, once even a cluster of crystalline flowers that hummed when touched. Jake started calling him Rusty, on account of those copper scales. Original? No. But it fit. What started as occasional visits became something else entirely. Something Jake couldn't quite explain in his reports. By the 3rd month, Rusty was showing up almost daily. Sometimes he'd just land on the roof of the habitat and sit there for hours, watching Jake work through the transparent dome. Other times he'd follow Jake on his sample-gathering expeditions, gliding between the purple trees like a bizarre, scaly escort. Jake began leaving out a basin of fresh water. Rusty appreciated that, drinking deeply every visit. Then Jake started setting out food scraps, nothing fancy, just bits of protein bars or dried fruit from his supplies. Rusty ate some of it, ignored other bits, but always seemed pleased by the gesture. The weirdest part? Jake started talking to him. Not just idle chatter either. Full conversations, like Rusty was a person who could understand every word. "See, the problem with the Federation approval process," Jake said one afternoon, collecting soil samples while Rusty perched on a nearby boulder, "is that nobody actually reads the reports. They just check boxes. I could write that I discovered dancing mushrooms and as long as I filled out Form 27B correctly, they'd approve it." Rusty tilted his head, making a series of clicks and chirps. "Exactly," Jake agreed, pointing his trowel at the dragon. "You get it. It's all bureaucracy, no actual science." This was crazy, Jake knew. Talking to an alien animal like it was his co-worker. But the isolation was getting to him, and besides, Rusty was a great listener. Never interrupted, never judged, just sat there with those intelligent golden eyes tracking every movement. Except Jake was starting to wonder if animal was the right word. Rusty showed an unsettling level of intelligence. Once, Jake dropped his data pad while climbing over some rocks. Before he could retrieve it, Rusty swooped down, grabbed it carefully in his claws, and brought it back. Not just random behavior, the dragon had seen Jake drop something important and returned it. Another time, Jake was struggling with a jammed equipment case. Rusty watched for a moment, then used his tail to flip the release latch Jake hadn't noticed. The case popped open. Problem solving. Tool use, sort of. Understanding of human frustration and desire to help. These weren't animal behaviors. These were something more. Jake started documenting everything. Video logs, behavioral notes, interaction patterns. He sent detailed reports back to his supervisors, getting more excited with each observation. The response was not what he hoped for. Dr. Matthews, his supervisor's recorded message played, her face stern on the screen, "We're growing concerned about your continued contact with native fauna. Non-interference protocols exist for important reasons. You're not there to befriend the wildlife. You're there to observe from an appropriate distance." Jake had argued back, recording his own message, "But that's just it," Rusty initiated the contact. "I'm not interfering, I'm responding. And the data I'm gathering about Dragonling intelligence is invaluable. You can't get this from drone footage." "Nevertheless," came the reply, "maintain professional distance. Attachment to alien species compromises scientific objectivity and could disrupt natural behaviors. This is your formal warning." Jake deleted the message and went back to leaving out water for Rusty. Some rules, he figured, were meant to be broken. Especially stupid rules made by people sitting in comfortable offices light years away who'd never actually met a Dragonling. 4 months into their strange friendship, everything changed. Rusty showed up injured again. Jake was running diagnostics on his atmospheric sensors when he heard the distinctive whoosh of wings. He looked up, smiling, ready to greet his regular visitor. The smile died when he saw Rusty struggling to land, his flight pattern erratic and wrong. The Dragonling crashed more than landed, tumbling across the clearing in front of the habitat. Jake ran outside, his heart hammering. Rusty. What happened? Burn marks. That's what Jake saw first. Long, ugly burns across Rusty's back and side, the copper scales blackened and cracked. Not natural burns either, these had the distinctive pattern of energy weapons. Plasma rifles, if Jake had to guess. Someone had shot Rusty. Jake's hands shook as he brought out his medical kit. The anger came hot and fast, making his vision swim red. Rusty chirped weakly, in obvious pain, but stayed still as Jake worked. The burns were bad but not life-threatening. Whoever shot him had either been a terrible shot or hadn't been trying to kill, just scare. Who did this to you? Jake muttered, applying burn gel with careful fingers. Who's shooting on my planet? Rusty made a low, mournful sound. Jake worked for over an hour, treating the burns, administering painkillers from his own supply. Probably not a great idea given different biologies, but he couldn't stand to see Rusty suffering. The Dragonling endured it all with remarkable patience, those golden eyes never leaving Jake's face. When Jake finally finished, Rusty didn't leave. He curled up right there outside the habitat, clearly too hurt and exhausted to fly. Jake brought out an emergency blanket and draped it over the dragon's back, then sat down beside him. You're safe here, Jake said quietly. I promise. Nobody's gonna hurt you while I'm around. Rusty made a small chirping sound and, to Jake's surprise, rested his head against Jake's leg. They sat like that until nightfall, human and dragon, while Jake's anger transformed into determination. Someone was hunting on Verdant 7. Someone was shooting intelligent creatures for sport or out of fear or for whatever reason people hurt things they don't understand. And Jake was going to find out who. That night, he started digging through satellite data, looking for unauthorized activity. What he found made his blood run cold. There was an installation on the far side of the continent. Big. Industrial. Definitely not authorized research. The energy signatures were all wrong, mining equipment, heavy machinery, weapons emplacements. An illegal operation. Had to be. Jake filed emergency reports, flagged the coordinates, demanded immediate investigation. He used every communication channel available, marked everything as high priority. The response came back 3 days later, report received. Investigation pending. Estimated response time, 90 to 120 days. 3 to 4 months. They were asking him to wait 3 to 4 months while someone out there was shooting dragonlings. Jake stared at the message, his jaw tight. Rusty had started visiting again, the burns healing slowly. But he seemed different now. More cautious. Sometimes he'd arrive and just circle overhead, not landing, like he was checking to make sure it was safe. Other times he seemed agitated, performing these elaborate aerial patterns that Jake didn't understand but could tell meant something. The Dragonling was trying to communicate something. Jake just didn't know what. Not yet, anyway. But he was starting to understand that Rusty wasn't just some friendly animal who'd taken a liking to him. There was something bigger happening here. Something that involved burned dragons and illegal mining operations and a level of intelligence that made Jake's scientific training scream for recognition. He just needed to figure out what before someone else got hurt. Jake became obsessed. He couldn't stop thinking about those burn marks on Rusty's scales, couldn't shake the image of someone deliberately firing on an intelligent creature. Sleep became difficult. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those weapon patterns burned into copper scales. He spent his nights digging through satellite feeds, tracking energy signatures from the illegal installation. The mining operation, because that's clearly what it was, had been there for at least 6 months. How had nobody noticed? The answer was depressingly simple: corruption. Someone had paid the right people to look the other way, buried the right paperwork, made the right donations to the right colonial oversight committees. Jake hacked into systems he definitely wasn't authorized to access. He justified it by telling himself he was doing the right thing, but mostly he was just angry. Angry enough not to care about the consequences. What he found made him sick. The mining corporation's internal communications were sloppy, unencrypted. Amateurs who thought they were too far from civilization to get caught. Their messages painted a clear picture. They were strip mining for rare earth elements, the kind that powered faster than light drives. Extremely valuable. Extremely illegal to extract without proper environmental surveys and native life assessments. But the part that made Jake's stomach turn was the casual way they talked about the Dragonlings. Cleared another nest today, one message read. These flying lizards are everywhere. Makes good target practice for the new guys though. Another, boss says shoot on sight if they come near the equipment. Don't need them causing problems. And the worst one, found a whole colony in Sector 7. Gonna need to exterminate before we can set up the new drills. Big ones, small ones, probably 50 total. Scheduling it for next week. They were talking about genocide like it was pest control. Jake forwarded everything to the authorities, flagged it as emergency evidence of sapient life endangerment. He knew it wouldn't speed things up much, the bureaucracy ground slowly regardless, but at least he had documentation. Proof. When people finally did show up, there'd be no way to sweep this under the rug. But when people showed up could be months away. And the Dragonlings were being killed now. Rusty's visits became erratic. Sometimes a week would pass with no sign of him, and Jake would pace his habitat, imagining the worst. Then Rusty would appear, often with new scars, and Jake would feel relief followed immediately by fresh anger. One morning, Rusty showed up acting strange. He landed but wouldn't settle, kept making these urgent chirping sounds and flying in tight circles. He'd fly toward the forest, then back to Jake, then toward the forest again. What? Jake asked. What are you trying to tell me? Rusty swooped down, grabbed the sleeve of Jake's jacket in his claws, carefully, not tearing, and tugged. He wanted Jake to follow. Jake hesitated. His training said stay at the habitat, don't venture into unknown territory without proper preparation, don't get emotionally involved with research subjects. But Rusty was pulling insistently, those golden eyes pleading in a way that transcended species. All right, Jake said. All right, I'm coming. He grabbed his survey pack, loaded with basic supplies and his long-range scanner, and climbed into his all-terrain rover. Rusty flew overhead, guiding him deeper into the forest than Jake had ever gone. They traveled for 2 hours, the terrain getting rougher, the purple trees growing denser. Rusty never flew too far ahead, always circling back to make sure Jake was following. Finally, they emerged into a clearing. Jake stopped the rover and just stared. Bodies. Dragonling bodies everywhere. At least 30 of them, maybe more. Adults and juveniles, scattered across the clearing like broken toys. Some had been shot, burn marks evident on their scales. Others looked like they'd been caught in an explosion. A few of the smaller ones seemed to have been crushed by heavy machinery. They'd been dead for days, maybe a week. The scent was overwhelming even through Jake's air filter. Rusty landed beside the rover and made a low, mournful sound. It was the saddest thing Jake had ever heard. Oh God, Jake whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He got out of the rover on shaking legs and started documenting everything. Photos, video, scanner readings, biological samples. Evidence. He needed evidence that even the slowest bureaucrat couldn't ignore. The Dragonlings had been nesting here. Jake could see the remnants, carefully arranged stones, woven branches, even what looked like decorative arrangements of colorful objects. They'd built homes. They'd created things of beauty. And someone had slaughtered them all. One of the adult Dragonlings, a big one with dark bronze scales, had clearly died protecting the smaller ones. Its body was positioned over 3 juveniles, wings spread wide even in death. Defensive posture. Shielding behavior. That's when Jake knew for certain, these weren't animals. Animals didn't sacrifice themselves for others outside of very specific parental instincts. This was different. This was choice. This was courage. These were people. Rusty walked among the bodies, touching his nose to several of them, making soft sounds. Grieving, Jake realized. The Dragonling was grieving. Did he know these individuals? Were they family? Friends? Jake felt tears running down his face and didn't bother wiping them away. He worked for 3 hours, documenting every detail. The evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't just illegal hunting, this was the systematic extermination of an intelligent species. When he finished, he uploaded everything directly to multiple government agencies, news services, and scientific institutions. He encrypted it all, made copies, scattered it across the network where it couldn't be deleted or buried. Then he sent a message with the subject line, "First contact species being exterminated on Verdant 7, immediate intervention required." He attached every piece of evidence, every communication he'd intercepted from the mining corp, every behavioral observation he'd made of Rusty over the past months. He made it impossible to ignore. The response was faster this time but still frustratingly slow. Evidence received and under review. Investigation escalated to priority status. Estimated response time, 45 to 60 days. 6 to 8 weeks. Still too long. Jake drove back to his habitat with Rusty flying alongside, both of them silent. When they arrived, Rusty didn't leave like he usually did. Instead, he landed right next to the habitat entrance and settled down, head on his claws, watching the horizon. Waiting. Jake understood. Rusty was afraid to go back out there. Afraid of the hunters with their guns and their casual cruelty. "You can stay," Jake said. "As long as you need. You're safe here." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept running through scenarios in his head, trying to figure out if there was anything more he could do. He was one person on a remote research station with no weapons, no authority, and no backup. The mining corporation had dozens of armed workers and heavy equipment. But he had to do something. The image of that bronze dragonling dying to protect the youngsters wouldn't leave his mind. Around midnight, Jake made a decision. He pulled up his emergency protocols and found the section on imminent threats to research personnel. There was a clause about evacuation procedures in case of dangerous situations. Jake had an idea. A crazy, career-ending idea. He activated his emergency beacon. The beacon was for genuine life-threatening emergencies only, natural disasters, hostile wildlife, severe injury, things like that. Using it falsely was a serious offense, grounds for immediate termination and possible criminal charges. But it would bring a ship. Within 48 hours, an evacuation vessel would arrive with crew, witnesses, and official authority. Jake crafted his emergency message carefully: imminent threat to station integrity. Unauthorized armed presence detected in research zone. Potential hostile contact. Requesting immediate evacuation and security assessment. Not technically a lie. There was an unauthorized armed presence. There was potential for hostile contact. He just left out the part where the threat was to the Dragonlings, not to him. He hit send. Outside, Rusty raised his head, as if sensing something had changed. Those golden eyes caught the light from Jake's window, reflecting it back like small suns. Jake stepped outside and sat down next to the Dragonling. "Help's coming," he said quietly. "I don't know if it'll be enough, but help's coming. I promise you, Rusty. I'm not letting them get away with this." Rusty made a soft chirping sound and rested his head on Jake's lap. They sat like that for a long time, human and dragon, watching the stars above Verdant 7. Jake had made his choice. His career was probably over. He'd likely face disciplinary action, maybe worse. But some things were more important than careers. Some things were worth fighting for. The next morning, Rusty was gone. Jake woke up to find the spot beside his habitat empty, no sign of the Dragonling anywhere. He tried not to panic. Rusty had disappeared before. He'd always come back. But this time felt different. Days passed. No Rusty. No gifts on the doorstep, no copper-scaled shape perched on the habitat roof, no chirping greetings at dawn. Just silence and the whistle of wind through the purple trees. Jake threw himself into research, partly to distract himself, partly because he needed answers. If a ship was coming, and one definitely was, his emergency beacon had been acknowledged, he needed to be prepared. He needed to prove that the Dragonlings weren't just smart animals but genuinely intelligent beings deserving of protection under Galactic Convention laws. He started reviewing months of drone footage, video he'd collected but never fully analyzed. What he found astonished him. The Dragonlings had complex social structures. The footage showed them gathering in specific locations at regular intervals, meetings, essentially. They shared food, not just between parents and offspring but across family groups. They engaged in what looked like teaching behaviors, older Dragonlings demonstrating hunting techniques to younger ones, not through instinct but through deliberate instruction. One video showed a group of Dragonlings working together to move a massive fallen tree that was blocking a stream. They coordinated, took breaks, switched positions based on size and strength. That was project planning. That was teamwork beyond simple pack behavior. Another clip showed two Dragonlings engaged in what could only be described as art. They were arranging colored stones in intricate patterns on a flat rock surface, stepping back to observe their work, making adjustments. Creating beauty for its own sake. Jake stayed up for 3 nights straight, compiling everything into a comprehensive report. His eyes burned, his coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't stop. Every video was another piece of evidence, another proof that humanity wasn't alone on Verdant 7. The Dragonlings were sapient. There was no other explanation. On the 4th day without Rusty, Jake's long-range sensors picked up increased activity from the mining installation. Energy weapon discharges, multiple signatures, concentrated in the eastern forests. They were hunting again. Jake monitored the feeds helplessly, watching the weapon signatures flare again and again. Each flash on his screen could be another Dragonling killed. Another Rusty, another member of the Bronze Defenders family, another intelligent being erased from existence for the crime of being in the way. He tried to calculate how many Dragonlings might be left on the entire planet. His stomach turned when he realized the number might be in the hundreds, not thousands. A small population, possibly already below sustainable levels. A few more massacres and the species could be functionally extinct. The emergency ship was still a day out. Too far. Too slow. Jake was pacing his habitat, checking sensors for the 1,000th time, when his proximity alarm went off. Something was approaching. Multiple somethings. He pulled up the visual feed and froze. Dragonlings. 5 of them, flying in formation toward his habitat. All juveniles, all around Rusty's size, all watching the ground carefully as they approached. And leading them was Rusty. Jake ran outside, his heart hammering. Rusty. You're okay. The Dragonlings landed in a semicircle about 20 feet from Jake. Rusty was in front, the others behind him, watching Jake with wary golden eyes. They looked nervous, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Rusty chirped and moved toward Jake, then back to the others, then toward Jake again. The same behavior he'd shown before leading Jake to the massacre site. Introduction behavior. It's okay, Jake said softly, addressing all of them. You're safe here. I won't hurt you. Rusty made a series of elaborate sounds, clicks and chirps and low rumbles. The other Dragonlings listened, heads tilted. Then, slowly, one of them stepped forward. This one had green-tinted scales and a scar across its snout. Jake stayed very still as the green Dragonling approached. It sniffed at him, eyes never blinking, then made a soft sound. Not threatening. Curious. Hey there, Jake whispered. I'm Jake. Friend of Rusty's. The green one retreated to the group. One by one, the others approached. A small one with pale copper scales. A larger one with dark bronze coloring. Each of them investigated Jake, seemed to come to some decision, then stepped back. Jake set out multiple basins of water. The Dragonlings drank gratefully, keeping one eye on him the whole time. Then he brought out food, all the protein bars and dried fruit he could spare from his supplies. They ate cautiously at first, then more eagerly. They were hungry. Probably hadn't eaten safely in days. The Dragonlings stayed for 3 hours. Jake talked to them the way he talked to Rusty, keeping his voice calm and steady. He showed them his equipment, let them investigate the rover, allowed them to satisfy their obvious curiosity about this strange human and his habitat. When they finally left, flying off together with Rusty in the lead, Jake felt something shift in his chest. Rusty had brought his friends. Or family. Or whatever Dragonlings called their social groups. He'd brought them to the one human who'd shown kindness. Who'd proven trustworthy. That night, Jake's senses went crazy. The mining installation had deployed 3 times its normal number of workers into the forests. The weapon signatures were constant, overwhelming. They weren't hunting anymore. This was extermination. Systematic and thorough. Jake sent frantic messages to every authority he could reach, but the responses were the same. Help was coming, hold tight, stay safe. Easy for them to say from their comfortable offices light years away. He was checking the evacuation ship's ETA, 16 hours, still too long, when his proximity sensors triggered again. More Dragonlings incoming. A lot more. Jake stepped outside and his breath caught. The sky was full of them. Dozens of Dragonlings, circling his habitat, landing in the clearing, perching on rocks and trees. Juveniles like Rusty, adults 3 times their size, even tiny hatchlings barely able to fly straight. They kept coming, wave after wave, until Jake lost count. 50? 100? More? And in the middle of them all, leading them like a general commanding troops, was Rusty. The Dragonlings settled, creating a living carpet of copper and bronze and green scales around Jake's habitat. They were quiet, watchful, waiting. Jake understood with stunning clarity, they were seeking refuge. Rusty had told them about the safe human, and they'd come. All of them. Maybe every Dragonling left in this region of Verdant 7. They'd come to him for protection. Jake's legs felt weak. He sat down hard on the ground, and several nearby Dragonlings turned to look at him. No fear in their eyes now. Just exhaustion and desperation and hope. I see you, Jake said, his voice cracking. I see you, and I know what you are. You're people. You're not animals, you're people, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too. A massive Dragonling, easily 15 feet long with bronze scales that shimmered like polished metal, approached. This one moved with age and authority, every step deliberate. An elder, Jake realized. A leader. The elder stopped in front of Jake and looked at him with eyes that held depths Jake could barely comprehend. Intelligence. Wisdom. Understanding. Then the elder bowed its head. It was a gesture of respect. Of trust. Of desperate hope placed in the hands of a stranger. Jake reached out slowly and touched the dragon's scaled head. Warm. Solid. Real. I won't let you down, he promised. The ship comes tomorrow. They'll see. Everyone will see. The elder made a low, rumbling sound and settled down beside Jake's habitat. The other dragonlings followed suit, creating a protective circle. They stayed that way through the night, hundreds of dragonlings and one human, waiting for dawn and whatever it would bring. Jake didn't sleep. He stood watch with them, these people without voices that humanity could understand, these refugees in their own home. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow, he'd make sure of it. Dawn broke over Verdant 7, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jake stood outside his habitat, surrounded by hundreds of sleeping dragonlings, and felt the weight of what was about to happen settle on his shoulders. The evacuation ship would arrive in less than 2 hours. Everything depended on the next few hours. Everything. Jake had spent the night preparing. He'd organized all his evidence into a presentation that even the most skeptical bureaucrat couldn't dismiss. Video evidence, behavioral analysis, documentation of language patterns, proof of tool use, art, teaching, grieving. Everything that separated people from animals. The dragonlings began waking as the sun rose. The hatchlings first, chirping and tumbling over each other. Then the juveniles, stretching their wings. Finally the adults, including the massive bronze elder who'd bowed to Jake the night before. Rusty appeared at Jake's side, as he always did. The little copper dragonling, not so little anymore, Jake realized, he'd grown over these months, chirped a greeting. Big day, buddy, Jake said quietly. You brought everyone here. You trusted me. Now I need you all to trust me a little bit longer. The ship's arrival was hard to miss. A streak of light across the sky, the roar of atmospheric engines, then the bulky evacuation vessel settling down in the clearing about a quarter mile from Jake's habitat. Far enough to be safe, close enough to retrieve him quickly if needed. Jake's heart hammered as he watched the boarding ramp lower. Captain Rebecca Torres was the first one out, followed by her crew of 6. Jake recognized the type, veteran spacers who'd seen everything and weren't impressed by much. Torres was scanning the area with professional efficiency when she stopped dead. Her hand went to her sidearm. Matthews, she shouted. Step away from the wildlife. We're reading hundreds of large fauna signatures. Don't. Jake called back, holding up his hands. Captain Torres, please don't draw your weapon. They're not dangerous. They're refugees. Torres looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Matthews, what the hell is going on here? Your emergency beacon said hostile armed presence. There is hostile armed presence, Jake interrupted. But not here. There's an illegal mining operation slaughtering intelligent beings. These dragonlings came to me for protection. One of the crew members, a young woman with a scanner, spoke up. Captain, I'm reading weapon discharge residue on multiple specimens. Recent burns, projectile wounds. They've definitely been shot at. Torres's expression shifted from alarm to confusion. Intelligent beings? Matthews, are you saying? I'm saying first contact, Captain. We have first contact. The words hung in the air. Torres stared at him, then at the dragonlings, then back at Jake. That's a hell of a claim. You have proof? Hours of it. And I can show you more right now. Jake gestured to the elder bronze dragonling. Watch. He walked slowly toward the elder, who raised its massive head. Jake pulled out his datapad and displayed a series of geometric shapes, circle, square, triangle. The elder studied them for a moment. Then, using one sharp claw, it drew the same shapes in the dirt. Circle. Square. Triangle. Pattern recognition, Jake said. Now watch this. He drew the shapes in a different order. Square, circle, triangle. The elder replicated it exactly. Communication, Jake continued. Understanding of symbolic representation. He pointed at himself. Jake. Then at Rusty. Rusty. The elder made a deep rumbling sound, clearly vocalization. Then it pointed with its tail at itself and made a different sound. A name, in its own language. Torres's jaw had gone slack. Her crew was muttering, scanners going wild. Holy! Torres breathed. Matthews, if this is real. It's real, Captain. And they're being exterminated. There's a mining corporation on the other side of the continent killing them by the dozens. I have evidence of massacre sites, intercepted communications, everything. The ship's xenobiologist, an older man named Dr. Chen, pushed forward. Captain, request permission to conduct field assessment. Granted, Torres said immediately. Full protocol. What happened next was controlled chaos. Dr. Chen and his assistant began running tests, always asking Jake to mediate with the Dragonlings first. The Dragonlings, to Jake's relief, cooperated. The Elder seemed to understand that these newcomers were Jake's people, and if Jake trusted them, they could be trusted too. The tests confirmed what Jake already knew. The Dragonlings showed advanced cognitive abilities across every metric. Problem-solving that matched human children aged 8 to 10. Social structures comparable to early human tribes. Symbolic thinking. Abstract reasoning. Emotional complexity. Dr. Chen was practically vibrating with excitement. Captain, this is legitimate sapience. No question. These beings meet every criterion in the Galactic Convention for Intelligent Life Recognition. Torres pulled out her comm unit. I need to contact headquarters immediately. This is beyond my authority to. She was interrupted by the massive bronze elder, who suddenly stood and spread its wings. The Dragonling made a loud, urgent sound, and every other Dragonling responded, heads turning toward the east. Jake felt his stomach drop. What is it? What's wrong? Rusty launched into the air, circling frantically, making distressed calls. Torres's tactical officer checked his scanners. Captain, I'm picking up multiple aircraft approaching from coordinates. He checked his screen, matching the location of that mining installation Matthews mentioned. Armed transports. ETA 12 minutes. They're coming here? Torres demanded. Looks like it, Captain. Moving fast. Jake understood immediately. They must have spotted your ship landing. They know something's happening. They're coming to, he couldn't finish the sentence. To finish what they started. To eliminate the evidence. The Dragonlings were agitated now, the adults forming protective circles around the juveniles and hatchlings. They'd seen those aircraft before. They knew what they meant. Torres made a decision. Tactical, defensive positions. Shields up. Matthews, get those Dragonlings behind our ship, use it as cover. Captain, we're not authorized to engage, one crew member started. I don't care, Torres snapped. I'm not standing by while someone commits genocide. Defensive positions means we protect ourselves and anyone seeking our protection. That's within my authority. Jake was already moving, calling to Rusty, to the Elder, using gestures and his limited understanding of Dragonling behavior to urge them toward the ship. The Dragonlings understood, moving quickly, the adults shepherding the young ones. The mining corporation's aircraft appeared on the horizon. 3 heavy transports, bristling with weapons. Torres opened a comm channel. Unidentified aircraft, this is Federation Evacuation Vessel Mercy. You are approaching a Federation installation. State your business. The response was cold. Federation vessel, this is Vertex Mining Security. We're pursuing dangerous wildlife that's threatened our personnel. Stand aside. Negative, Vertex. The beings you're referring to are under Federation protection as potential sapient life. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. A pause. Then, Captain, I don't think you understand the situation. Those creatures are pests. We have mineral rights to this entire sector. Your mineral rights are suspended pending investigation of illegal operations and possible genocide charges, Torres shot back. You have 30 seconds to reverse course or I will consider your approach a hostile act. Jake watched the aircraft slow but not stop. They were testing Torres, seeing if she'd back down. She didn't. Weapons to ready status, Torres ordered. Target their engines only. Warning shots if they advance further. The mining aircraft stopped, hovering about a mile out. Jake realized he'd been holding his breath. Behind the Federation ship, hundreds of Dragonlings watched silently, the Elder standing at the front with Rusty beside it. The standoff lasted 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Then the mining aircraft began to retreat. Smart choice, Torres muttered. She turned to Jake. Matthews, we need to get everyone on record. Full documentation. Every Dragonling, every injury, every piece of evidence you have. By the time I'm done, the Federation is going to drop on Vertex Mining like a hammer. Over the next 6 hours, Torres's crew worked with Jake to document everything. They recorded the Elder performing complex tasks. They catalogued the injuries on dozens of Dragonlings. They visited the massacre site with a security escort, documenting the horror Jake had found. Dr. Chen interviewed Jake extensively, recording every interaction he'd had with Rusty, every observation of Dragonling behavior. "This is the most significant xenobiological discovery in 50 years, he kept saying. "Maybe ever." As the sun began to set, Torres approached Jake. "You know you're going to be famous, right? First contact specialist. They'll write about you in textbooks." Jake shook his head. "I'm not the specialist. Rusty is. He made first contact. He decided to trust a human. He brought his people to me when they needed help. All I did was not screw it up." Torres smiled. "Still. You did good, Matthews. Really good." By the next morning, 3 more Federation ships had arrived, along with a full diplomatic team, scientific teams, and enough firepower to make sure Vertex mining stayed far away. The mining installation was being shut down, its personnel arrested. Criminal charges were being filed. The Dragonlings would be protected. Verdant 7 would be designated a preserve world, off-limits to development. They'd survived. Jake stood with Rusty on a hill overlooking the habitat as the diplomatic teams began their work establishing formal communication protocols with the Elder Dragonlings. "You saved them," Jake said quietly. "You trusted me when you had no reason to. You brought everyone here because you believed I'd help. That's incredible, Rusty. You're incredible." Rusty chirped and pressed his head against Jake's shoulder. 5 years later, Jake stood in the Federation embassy on Verdant 7, no longer just a researcher but Earth's primary ambassador to the Dragonling communes. The Dragonlings had their own territories now, protected by law, their intelligence recognized across known space. And Rusty, now fully grown and a leader among his people, still visited. He had hatchlings of his own now, and he brought them to meet Jake, just as he'd been brought to the human who'd started it all. First contact hadn't come through governments or protocols. It came through one injured Dragonling and one human who chose kindness. Who chose to see a person instead of an animal. Sometimes, Jake reflected, the most important choices we make are the simplest ones. To help instead of ignore. To trust instead of fear. To see intelligence and dignity in eyes that don't look like our own. Rusty chirped, and Jake smiled, reaching out to touch those familiar copper scales. Some friendships transcend species. Some bonds change worlds. This one had done both.